All right, we should be live. Welcome, everybody. Sunday morning here in Minnesota, Sunday evening or afternoon if you're in Europe. How's everyone doing this morning? We have a good one today. We're talking imbalances. So, kind of continuing our theme of chess evaluation and planning, strategic principles. We are going through imbalances today. Let's see who we have in the chat so far. It's going to be an interactive lesson, just like always. We have Thomas, we have Hamlin, Hammocks, we have Julio, we have Tim. Julio's doing great. Welcome. Jackie's in the chat. Good to see you, Jackie. How's everyone's weekend going so far? Anyone do anything exciting yesterday on Saturday? Spider in the chat, welcome. I have kind of a fun Saturday night update, but I want to see if you guys did anything fun. We'll just wait a couple minutes for people to roll in. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Is it Suen? Welcome, Suen, from Lyon, France. Ian's here from Cayman Islands. Welcome, Ian. Scar Dragon from India. Welcome. Muhammad is here from Oman. Oh, Julio had Friday night adult chess club. I love that idea. I've never done like an adult only over the board event, but I've heard about them before. Hamlin says, played my best friend in 2 over the board games on my new chestnut. Oh, cool. I think chestnut, is that one of the boards that plays itself? Or is that something, am I thinking of something different? So last night I played in a pickleball tournament. Some of you guys know I'm huge into pickleball. It was super fun. Like I knew all the other teams. I knew all the players that we faced. It was 6 teams. We ended up getting 5th place. It was a 3-way tie, 4th through 6th. We ended up getting 5th, but a lot of really good games. Colin is cruising the Caribbean while watching the live stream. That's dedication. Thanks for watching. Scar Dragon, I have a rapid 20+5 tournament in 6 days. Any tips, sir? Yeah, I think try to go in fresh. You know, go in with a healthy mindset and then maybe do some puzzles leading up to it just to make sure you're sharp. Oh, LCD lights to play live games. Okay, so that's the chestnut. Cool. They did use tie breaks to determine 4th through 6th. So tie breaks put us in 5th. Had we been 4th, we would have got to play in the 3rd versus 4th match for a bronze medal. But we just missed out on that on the point differential tie break. So we were 5th on tie breaks. Okay, so what are we going to go through today? We are going to do a course giveaway towards the end. I have 6 games for us to look at. Muhammad, okay, sorry to interrupt the flow. This is the very first super chat the channel has ever had. Muhammad coming in with a $2 donation to the channel. I think it's the very first time this has ever happened. So thank you, Muhammad. So we're going to go through 6 games today. 2 games on backward pawns, 2 games on lock center, 1 game talking about good versus bad bishop, and then 1 game with a really cool knight reroute example. So these are all kind of fitting the imbalances theme that we've been talking about recently. And we're going to talk about like what's the evaluation in this position, what's the plan for each side, those sort of things, just to help get all those ideas in your guys' minds so that when you reach strategic positions, you can better formulate a plan kind of based on having all these ideas floating around in your head. So let's dive right in. And I'm happy to say, so last week, I don't know if I mentioned it, maybe just at the beginning of the stream, but I'd essentially lost my voice that morning, and it's probably 90% back, so that's pretty nice. All right, let's switch to the board. Okay, backward pawn, game number 1. Thanks again, Muhammad. We have Rubenstein with the white pieces and George Solway with the black pieces. So we see a Tarrasch defense. That's when black puts pawns on d5 and c5. White's got d4, c4, and this pawn on e6. cd, e takes d. And now this game is going to focus on the pawn on d5. So if you watched last week's class, you can already probably recognize this structure. What's going to happen is these two pawns are likely to trade, and the pawn on d5 is going to be the isolated queen pawn in the end. And if it's not an isolated queen pawn, then that c pawn probably moved up, and this will become a backward pawn. Right? So already in this position, 4 moves into the game, my brain is thinking this game is going to be about the d pawn. That's what I'm already thinking in this position. And I think that's what you guys should start to think about too out of the opening. Like, what do the pawns say about the position? And what does that mean in terms of what do we need to focus on in this position? We have knight f3, knight f6, g3. Now this move is very strategic as well. We're 6 moves in. White wants to put the bishop on g2. Why? Because it attacks the pawn on d5. That's most likely going to be an isolated pawn. And one of the best ways for black to play with the isolated queen pawn is to attack the white king. Play very actively, attack the white king. The fianchetto setup against an IQP is usually the best setup. And the reason for that is because the g pawn on g3 blockades a black bishop sitting on d6. So remember that in your games. If you have an IQP, you would prefer your opponent doesn't have this kingside fianchetto. And then on the flip side, if your opponent has the IQP, set up a kingside fianchetto like this and put your bishop on the long diagonal so that it can point from g2 to d5. Okay, let's go forward a little bit. C takes d, knight takes d. Now here's the first question for the chat. So again, this is going to be an interactive class. I want you guys to put questions as I go. Just drop them right in the chat. I'll answer them when I get to them. And then I also have planned questions for you guys too. So first question here. What is the eval and what are the plans for each side? So put your answers in the chat. Let's see what you guys think. What is the Stockfish eval and what are the plans for each side here? And the plans are kind of a review from last week. Let's see what you guys remember from the IQP lesson. We have 26 viewers. That's awesome. Okay, Julio is saying plus 0.5 for white. Castle, develop, and put pressure on the d5 pawn. Okay, I like that. So castle, pressure d5. Gerard is saying equal position. Black wants to play active and prevent exchanges. Yes, keep pieces on for black. Tim, 0.5 for white, attack IQP. Colin, 0.4. Blockade and win the pawn. Activate pieces, use the open lines. Yes, very good. You guys are on the right track. It's a 0.27, according to Stockfish, at depth 27. And that's exactly what white wants to do. White wants to blockade this pawn, attack it, and keep it a long-term weakness. Black wants to keep pieces on the board and try to attack. All right, so queen b6, knight takes c6, b takes c6. Now we've transferred to what's called a hanging pawn structure. Pawns on c6 and d5. But what we're really going to focus on this game is the backward pawn. The backward pawn on c6. That means it's a backward pawn because there are no pawns next to it or behind it, on the adjacent files. And white wants to try to keep this as a backward pawn. White wants to prevent that pawn from ever moving up to c5. So that's going to be the key focus in this game. And the eval here is around 0.4. So white has this slight edge to work with. Black doesn't have a ton of counterplay in this position. Castle, bishop e7, knight a4. This is a good one to remember. This happens in multiple openings. When there's a weak pawn like the one on c6, it's really a good idea to fix that as a weakness. The way you do that is you try to control the square in front of it. So white's playing knight a4, gains a tempo on the queen, but the main idea is it's helping to control the c5 square. Queen b5, bishop e3. Now these two moves might look funny, right? Knight on a rim, bishop blocking the e pawn. but they have the same goal in mind. White wants to control the c5 square, and next a rook or queen can get on the c file and put a third defender on c5. Castle for black. Here it comes, rook c1. So not only is white pressuring c6 with the rook, white's also now fully controlling c5. 3 pieces on this square for white, only 2 for black, so the c-pawn cannot push forward here. Now in this position, the eval is still sitting around like 0.25 or 0.3, right? So Stockfish is saying black's completely fine here. It's just a very small edge for white. But I like to think about evals in terms of human versus human, not Stockfish playing optimal play. In this position, I very strongly prefer white. It seems much easier to play against this c-pawn from the white side, and I don't see any clear plans from black. Bishop to g4. This is creative. Black is trying to create some weaknesses in white's position, so double attack this pawn on e2, and it provoked white to play a move that I'm not in love with, pawn to f3. What I don't like about this is it weakens the dark squares around the white king. I don't think it's necessary, but the computer is not too opposed to this move. The strongest move is rook e1, which I think is just a harder move to play. It looks passive, but that keeps the pawn structure solid and keeps the slight advantage. So f3, bishop e6, bishop c5. Now this is a critical move. The bishop on c5 is threatening to trade off black's good bishop. So that's the good bishop for black because it's the opposite color of these pawns. White wants to trade that off, and that's going to give white even further control of the dark squares in the center. Rook f8, rook f2, kind of a creative move. Knight d7, now white trades the bishops, and queen d4. Queen d4 reinforces the control over c5. Now notice how black has the knight and the queen here supporting c5. Black probably wants to push c5 if given the chance. Queen d4, make sure that black's not going to push. And now in this position, white's plan is probably to play e3, b3, e3, b3, and knight c5. So then all of white's pawns are safe, and then white's sticking that knight on c5, really just highlighting the full control of c5. Julio's saying, wow, I would not have found that sequence in a game. Now I might see it. Perfect. In the fight for c5. Yep. Scar Dragon is saying f3 did weaken the bishop on g2. Yeah, I agree with that. So now that bishop takes a little bit longer to get back into the game. Okay, rook back to e8 for black. Bishop to f1, and here it comes. Bishop's coming back. Now, pawns on e3 and f4 would make sense, right? Because e3 and f4 would use the pawns to control dark squares with this bishop on the light squares. So that's something that white can go for here. Black's bishop is sitting pretty poorly. It's stuck between 2 pawns. Sometimes this is called a tall pawn, right? The bishop actually acts like a pawn. It controls 3 additional squares that it can move to, but if it were a pawn, it would already control f5 too. So really the bishop is only controlling 2 extra squares that a pawn wouldn't cover. And a pawn would at least have the option to push. Okay, rook c8, e3, queen b7. Now what we're going to see here, and this is actually a big theme in today's class, we're going to see that black gets a little bit passive in this position. And you guys really need to be careful about playing too passively in these positions that call for strategic plans. So if black doesn't have a plan here, a strong player from the white side is going to create a plan and slowly pick apart black's position. That's what we're going to see happen. So first, knight c5, forking the queen and knight, also hitting the bishop. Black takes, rook takes c5. Now, the eval here is actually only 0.2 for white still. But the question for you guys, question for the chat, put your answers in there. What is the number 1 problem for black in this endgame? What do you think? So an engine's going to hold this from the black side. Stockfish against stockfish. This is going to be a draw all day long. But we're humans. Yeah, Tim's saying great to see how the target changes. Okay, Luke is saying c6. Abish is saying backward pawn. Thomas says no counterplay. Frank says pawn on c6. Scar Dragon, pawn structure. Yep. And also the the passive position for black. So not only is it that backward pawn, but it's the fact that black needs to just play defense and just stuck defending the pawn. Sangha is saying weakness on c6. Mohammed says c6 in the background. Tim says, yep, passive. Yeah, Colin, that's exactly right. So you need to read whatever white's doing. You're just playing reaction chess. White has the initiative. Rook c7 for black. Now, this move actually ups the eval for white to 0.9. It looks solid though, right? Black wants to maybe double the rooks, keep this secure. It makes sense. The computer says, and this is modern chess for you guys. So we're looking at an older game. This is from 1908. Back then, players were okay just like defending everything and playing passive. Modern chess says you need to play active. The two moves that the computer likes here are actually a5 and h5. So the computer knows that this pawn is a long-term weakness and that you can't give white all the time in the world to increase the pressure on the pawn, because then white might use the principle of two weaknesses, right? Put all the pressure on c6 like we talked about last week. That's weakness number one. Get black defending that pawn, and then attack somewhere else, and all of a sudden black can't defend both. The computer knows that this could happen, and that's why it wants to fight back right away. a5 or h5, those are the top moves. Okay, rook c7 played. White doubles on the c-pawn. And now b4 is coming. Queen to b6. This move, black should have definitely played a5. Black needs to be aware of b4, b5 being a problem. So b4. And look what black plays. a6. It's so passive. Black is just sitting and waiting. This is not going to be good. Rook a5. Rook to b8. And this is a blunder now. Queen takes d4 could be played here. That's the strongest move. E takes d, rook b7, a3. Well, this is still a +1 for white. White's having all the fun in this position. White will never lose. It's either going to be a draw or white wins. But rook b8 played. This is a blunder. Now it's in white winning territory. a3, and we're going to see why. One of these two pawns is going to drop. White has bishop and rook hitting this one. Rook's already on this one, and white just secured the b pawn, which black double attacked. Okay, rook a7. And now we see a cool tactic. Rook takes c6. Queen takes, and then the rook drops on a7. Queen comes right back to c5, conversion mode. And I'll just show you pretty quickly how this game ends. See how white has full control of the c file, making sure there's no counterplay for black. This bishop is still a tall pawn. Black's fighting for a little counterplay, but it's not going to be anything. Pass pawn created. Marches up the board. Pawn becomes too much. Black simply resigns here. Okay, so Rubenstein in this game, the player with the white piece, has followed a very clear plan. Attack black's weak pawn. So he patiently improved his position, traded off key defenders, increased the pressure step by step, and eventually black's position cracked under the pressure, leading to an easy win for white. Okay, so what I'm going to do in today's class, we haven't done this in the prior classes, but after each game, I'm going to ask you guys, what was your main takeaway from the game? Because I think the act of typing the answer in the chat is going to help cement this for you guys. So what was your main takeaway from this game? Was it the power of a simple plan? Was it how to exploit a backward pawn? Was it don't play passively? What's your main takeaway? Play actively, exploit the weak pawns, play actively. Tim is saying, great to see almost the whole plan on pawn weaknesses. Don't play passively. Yep. There are some cases where it's okay to play passive, but I would say it's rare. If that's your only good option to play passive, like say it's an endgame and you just have to hold the draw, that's fine. But for the most part, you don't want to sit back and play passive for too long. Importance of the backward pawn. Tackle the opportunity immediately. Yep. Prevent the backward pawn from moving forward. Good. Preventing good pawn structure. Yep. Very good. Okay, let's go to game number 2. Another backward pawn game. We have a French defense winnower variation. White already has the space advantage with the pawn on e5. We're going to go through this part a little bit quickly. So you can see these pawns point towards the king side for black. These pawns point towards the queen side. Sorry. These point towards black's king side. So white's pawns point towards black's king side. Black's pawns point towards the queen side. But white's doing a nice job here, sort of controlling the queen side. Now bishop to b1 is played. And here's the question for you guys. Question for the chat. This is Westerinen is playing white, and Korchnoi is playing black from 1968. So I only know who Korchnoi is. So question for the chat. What's the eval and why? What is black's best plan here? So put both of those into the chat. What's the eval? And what is black's best plan here? So we see that white has the space advantage. There's this pawn on e5. And when you look at the direction of the pawn chain, that tells you that black should look to play queenside. But white's also doing a pretty good job controlling squares on the queen side. So what is the best plan for black here? Hey, House, welcome. House won the free course last week. So House says white is trying something like queen c2 or queen to d3 to go to h7. Yes, that is correct. Hey, Waldez, welcome. No worries about being late. Waldez, keep it on the live stream, and then if you want to go back after the class, you could watch the first game. Muhammad is saying, attack the knight and play for b5. Okay, so go for maybe c6, b5, queenside play. Use the direction of this pawn chain. Scar Dragon says eval is probably 0.3 for white, and white needs to kind of cement this knight here on b5. Eval seems +1, is what Luke is saying. Black should play for c5. Okay, eval is 0.4, so you guys are on the right track with the eval. There's another plan for black that no one's mentioned yet. Can someone tell me what the other plan for black is? This is one that happens to me in the Caro-Kann all the time. Let me flip the board. Let's look at this rest of this from the black side. In the Caro-Kann advanced variation, this pawn ends up on e5, this pawn's on d4. You can get very similar looking positions to this. Yes, House, that's exactly right. f6. f6 is the other way that you can play this position. Okay, let's flip it back. So this is a key move. f6. You're attacking the front of the pawn chain. The downside, the potential downside to this move, well, there's a couple. It weakens these light squares a bit. Also, it encourages or it invites white to make the pawn on e6 a backward pawn, right? If f6 trades off for e5, picture those just disappearing, this is a backward pawn. But this is a key move. This goes back to the whole don't play passive concept, right? So white takes, rook takes, and now we have a new imbalance. So the old imbalance was just essentially white has a space advantage. Black didn't have any counterplay yet. New imbalance. White does not have that space advantage anymore. Pawn on e5 is gone. There is this backward pawn, so that's a weakness, but like House said, the f-file is opened up. So black is now playing a fighting game with imbalances favoring both sides. That's important. Queen c2 for white, eyeing this square. And it's a tough position. This is the logical move, but it's actually a mistake. The problem is that the move is a little bit too slow, and black wanted to play this move anyways, knight g6. So that knight is eyeing these dark squares. Castle, rook a to f8, and watch the precision from Korchnoi in this game. He puts both rooks on the f-file, right? So both rooks are already active. Compare that to white's rooks. Look at the rook on a1. That's such a bad piece right now. White kind of went all in on this queen h7 plan. And then the knight on b5, which was doing a great job shutting down the queen side, isn't helping at all on the king side. That could become important later as well. Rook e1, bishop takes b5. So this game was played in 1968, like I mentioned. This is a nice strategic move. The computer doesn't love the move. It thinks that black should keep this bishop on, but I think it's good for you guys to appreciate why was this move played. Bishop takes b5 is played because the bishop on a6 wasn't helping at all with the kingside attack, and the knight on b5 had a little bit more potential as an active piece. So Korchnoi is trying to eliminate a good piece for white and get rid of a bad piece for himself. Knight back to e7. Okay, question for the chat now. What is black's plan and what is the threat? Put your answers in the chat. Colin is saying, why not knight e5? That's a good question. I think knight e5 could be a good move, trying to... Well, let's see. It's not playable here. So in this position, why not knight e5? Yeah, knight e5 is a good move here. But what is black's plan? Thomas, that's right. Rook takes f3. That's exactly right. So this knight defends the other knight, which was being attacked by the queen. Rook takes f3 is the threat, and it's super strong. Rook takes f3 is going to damage the white pawns, and then the black knights can jump in and help with the attack. Still a queen and rook left. It's exactly right. So white plays queen to d3. That defends this pawn on b5, which was attacked. Also defends the knight, but the move is still super strong. Rook takes f3. Brilliant move, and this is a -1 eval all of a sudden. So black is using the strategic play to now convert to a tactic, right? So now we're going into more of a tactical position. G takes f, knight h4. Now this isn't the computer's top move, but the idea is clear. Here's the follow-up. The knight's a monster, this king's exposed, and the knight wants to target the weak light squares. The computer says it's better to start with knight f5, and I think that's because that just shuts down any sort of queen h7 stuff. So queen h7 played, the black king runs, king h1. Now we see knight takes f3. So Korchnoi is down the exchange, but has a pawn back for it. It's only down 1 point of material. And this rook does not have a lot of squares, and white blunders here with rook to g1. So you might be wondering, why doesn't that rook go to another square, like rook f1, for example? Queen d6. That's game over. So black's attack became super strong really quickly. So white plays rook g1, creating the double attack here. Black takes, check, takes, knight moves. Then when the dust settles, black is up a knight, plays e5, which was mentioned in the chat by Luca and Mr. Bean. Bring this queen. The eval is -5. Okay, so let's summarize this game. The backward e6 pawn wasn't just a static weakness, but it was a temporary dynamic feature, right? Creating that backward pawn gave black all the play on the f-file. That led to the tactics, which led to a really quick knockout. This was only a 28-move game. So Korchnoi showed how we can play f6, kind of attacking the front of that pawn chain instead of trying to attack the back of it on the queen side. That's something that I want you guys to remember. And don't be afraid of the backward pawn, right? Sometimes playing actively or having those other imbalances in your favor can outweigh the downside of having the backward pawn. Okay, so what's the biggest thing you guys learned from the game? Put your answers in the chat. All right, thanks, Ryan. So compensate static issues with activity is what Thomas is saying. Yep. Scar Dragon, even after having a closed position, you could win easily. Yes, that is true. Because black was originally on the passive side of the closed position. Julio is saying take the initiative. Soon is saying make your pieces active as soon as you can and don't be afraid to be bold. House says we can accept structure weaknesses if we have compensation with the initiative and activity. Tim says can be okay to create a pawn weakness for activity. Sangha saying initiative. Good, good, good. Perfect, guys. Trade your bad piece with a good one. Damage the kingside pawns. Yeah, king. So at the sort of advanced beginner to intermediate level, king safety is crucial. King safety really determines the outcome of most games, I would say. Number one thing is just don't blunder material, but then I would say the number two thing is king safety. King safety issues lead to a lot of tactical problems. Okay, now we are going to a locked center game from 1971. Bent Larson with the white pieces, Bobby Fischer with the black pieces. This is going to be a King's Indian defense. Great question. Do you always have to see through all these moves before playing them, like the rook for knight sacrifice in the last game? That one you can play more on intuition. You can just get a sense for those imbalances, right? You know that white had that rook stuck on a1. You had a lot of attacking potential, damaged white king side. That one you can play by feel. But sometimes you do need to calculate it all out. Okay, so let's get to the King's Indian position. White here plays d5, knight e7. Very typical King's Indian structure. So question for you guys. What are the plans for each side here? What do you think? Look at the pawn structure. Look at these pawns. Look at this pawn chain. Fianchetto. What's the plan for each side? Spider says 1971. Good year. I'm assuming Spider was probably born in like 1991. That's my guess. Okay, black might want to go for f5, says House. Thomas says black is kingside, white is queenside pawn pushes. Tim says attack the backward white pawns, which would be these two. White should activate pieces. Black should play bishop to g4. White attack queenside, black kingside. Good. Do you guys have some experience? Okay, Spider was born in 1887. Oh. Might be the oldest member ever to watch a live class, Spider. So you guys have it exactly right. Black should look to play f5, use this pawn chain, and attack on the king side. And white has all of this queenside space, so they should look to play a4, b4, c5, something like that. Okay, knight d2 played. And now black plays c5. I kind of like this move myself. Black creates this V-shaped pawn formation that I like to think of about it as. This is the backward pawn. But now the pawn chains, plural, 2 pawn chains, point both directions for black. And that's why I like these positions from the black side, because you can play for f5 or you can play for b5. They both make sense now. Rook b1, knight e8, preparing this. b4, so white is doing the right thing here. This is a position where you don't want to sit and play passive for white. b4, play active. b6, right? Because now black's got this passive queenside position, and white's more active with the pawn on b4, right? White could take, white could push. There's options, whereas black's b pawn is just sitting back and waiting. a4, good move by white. f5, and now the race is on. So we can clearly see Fischer made this c5, b6 play to try to lock up the queen side, and then he's going to attack king side. And Bent Larson is saying, I'm still going to attack queen side, and I'm hoping that it's faster than your king side attack. The computer still likes white here, and I think that's because of the space advantage. a5. This is a cool move too. White is creating extra tension, right? So white wants to make a break happen over on the queen side. It's a race, right? So you don't have time to sit around waiting forever. A move like b5 here, critical mistake. And I've seen a lot of players play moves like this. This is a big mistake because now all white can do is play for a5 and then try to take here to open it up. Black simply takes back, and it's really difficult for white to break through. That's why a5 is much stronger. Knight f6, queen a4, bishop d7, queen a3, bishop h6, bishop d3, queen c7, takes, takes. So now white creates the open file. So white's kind of the first player to get some play on their flank, right? All black has done so far is played f5. But black's pawns are still strong, right? There's still a lot of play on the king side, and it's not clear yet how white can take advantage of the b file. So here white plays e takes f5. Now a question for the chat. What is the best response for black? Which way would you capture back? There's 3 options. And actually on this one, there's no wrong option, but I want to see what you guys think. And there's a reason why Fischer played the move that he did. Chess Books in Depth is saying, thank you so much for the valuable insights. Yeah, thank you for watching. Okay, we have a bishop takes, a pawn takes, and a knight takes. 1 for each so far. Bishop takes, 2 votes. Bishop takes, 3 votes. Knight takes because the bishop is important for Bobby. Bishop takes. Pawn takes. Bishop takes. My instinct was also bishop takes. I think the reason that Fischer did not prefer bishop takes is because if you compare this bishop on d7 to this bishop on d3, the d7 bishop is the good bishop for black, and the d3 bishop is pretty clumsy. So there's 2 moves that are kind of tied for the best eval. It's knight takes and pawn takes. Bishop takes is a little bit lower. So bishop takes is like a 0.6 or 0.7 for white. The other 2 are around 0.2 or 0.3 for white. But g takes was played. And I think this is a really important strategic idea for you guys. Similar to the last game where black accepted the backward pawn weakness to play for imbalances, Fischer is accepting the open g file, the potential king safety weakness, to use the g file to attack the white king and gaining space with this pawn on f5, right? So Fischer is saying, I'm going to accept some weaknesses to have other strengths to play with. That's what imbalances are all about in chess. And I think that's what makes chess such a rich game, is to just constantly be able to try to evaluate, like, what are the imbalances here? What are the plans? Can I change those imbalances? Can I create new plans? Can I get my opponent in a passive position? Those sorts of things. So Fischer is looking to play actively here and accepting some weaknesses in the pawn structure. Bishop back to c2, a6, knight d to e4. This is kind of a interesting tactic. The idea is the h6 bishop is loose, and if black takes, which was played in the game, then white can get away with knight takes f6 first, rook takes, and then take back. But this is actually a mistake, going back to this move, knight d to e4. This is a mistake. This move is actually too slow for white. So we're in a race here. This move does not help white. The strongest move was rook to b6. White needs to play actively on the queen side. Keep that activity going. As we'll see, knight d to e4 does not help white at all. Okay, so let's go back here. Rook takes. In this position, queen takes was even a little bit stronger, sort of highlighting these dark squares, the potential weaknesses that Fischer created. Rook a to f8. Rook b6. Threatens the pawn. So bishop c8. Knight e2. Now here's the question for you guys, and there is one clear best move here. Put your answer in the chat. What is the best move for black? What should black play here? And I think this move highlights why g takes f5 was played earlier, was a nice option instead of bishop takes f5. Knight g6, that's the second best move. So knight g6 is equal. The top move is a minus 0.4. Luca got it. Soon got it. Pawn to f4 for black. Valdez got it. Okay, so why is pawn to f4 so good here? If black does not play f4, like let's say king h8. I think king h8 is a logical move, opening the g file. White can play f4 and should play f4. Like clearly the best move here is f4 because this bishop on c8 is now stuck behind this pawn. Even though it creates a potential pass pawn, white can work around it. It blocks up the rooks, blocks the knight, right? Everything just became passive for black. If black plays f4 here, which is played in the game, now everything is open still. f3 is a threat. Bishop on the diagonal, the f5 square is open. Maybe the rook comes over, right? The attack is much more potent. These pawns work perfectly together with the light square bishop because they attack all the dark squares and the bishop attacks the light squares. Okay, bishop e4 played. Knight f5, using that f5 square. Rook c6, queen g7. So notice how black's just bringing more and more attackers over here on the king side. Rook b1, knight h4. And you can do a simple count here. How many attackers are king side versus how many defenders? And then if you look at the queen side, how many attackers over there versus how many defenders? So white has an advantage queen side. The three most valuable pieces are over here. But this one lone bishop is doing a pretty good job shutting everything down, right? White's play is pretty slow on the queen side. Black's play is happening very quickly king side. And a lot of times, if there's a tie in terms of the speed of the attacks, king side versus queen side flanks, if both attacks are working, the king side attack tends to be even more lethal because the king is there, right? You can create checks, you can create checkmate threats. That's sort of what's happening here. It's like tie goes to the runner in baseball, tie goes to the king side attack in chess. This isn't even probably a tie because black's attack is just coming more quickly. But let's say like white won the a6 pawn and then a couple moves later, black's creating mate threats. That can shift the balance into black's favor. Okay, I'm doing a technical change here. Okay. So queen d3 played for white, bishop f5, king h1, pawn to f3. This is the final push that just breaks open the position. Knight to g3, f takes g2, king g1, bishop takes e4. And one thing that I kind of glossed over, but bringing that bishop to f5, let's just back up a little bit. This is trying to remove one of the defenders from white's king side and getting rid of this bishop that wasn't yet helping with the attack. So it's kind of trying to increase the advantage in terms of attackers versus defenders. Okay, so move forward again. Bishop takes, queen takes, knight f3 check, king takes g2, knight d2. The game ends with a fork. So, what are the key lessons from this game? Locked centers can become pawn races. And you must attack as fast as possible on your side of the board. Right? So sometimes closed position, you can play slow, maneuver. But when it's a pawn race, you got to just go all out, right? If you need to make a prophylactic move or two where your one or two moves can cost your opponent 3 or 4 moves on their flank, definitely do it. But don't waste time. You need to be very quick with your attack. Also, don't be afraid to weaken your pawns to create an attack. So g takes f5 again. Black accepted a pawn weakness in order to attack. And then lastly, bring all of your pieces into the attack. So we saw Fischer's rooks, knights, queen, all involved in the attack. In the end, the bishop on c8 came back into the attack. Now, the remaining question for you guys, what was the main thing that you learned from this game? Drop your answers in the chat. Be like Bobby, and the lesson is you can't beat Bobby Fischer. Nice answers. What else do you guys think? What was the main thing you learned from that game? Next, we have another locked center game. So 26 people are watching right now. Thank you for watching, everybody. If you like the stream, please subscribe, hit the thumbs up, and tell one friend about ChessGoals. It's like the best thing you can do to help out ChessGoals is just tell your friends. Okay, Bobby is a machine. Take space when you can, especially when your opponent's attackers are on the other side of the board. Yep. Bobby pushed his pawns very well. Is Bobby F from your state, Matt? No, I think he was from New York. Spider says the first friend that they make, they will invite. Thank you, Spider. Hopefully you're joking, but if you're not, you can make a friend, play chess with them. Join the ChessGoals Discord. Okay, that's actually a great segue. If you don't have any chess friends, join the ChessGoals Discord, link in the description. It's open to everyone to join. Elvis is saying you can sometimes accept structure weaknesses if you get the initiative. Good. House is saying that Fischer was from Chicago and then moved to New York. That sounds right. All right, let's go to the next game. So this one is a more recent game, 2007. We have Jan Elvis with the black pieces, and Nana Sagnitsi is playing the white pieces. So white is rated 2463, black is rated 2610. All right. Here we get another lock center game. And we have this V formation for black again. The eval is 0.9 for white. White has a big advantage here, and it's due to the space. So now we got to think, what's the plan for each side? It's similar to the last game, right? Black wants to go for these two breaks, but white can also go for the same breaks, and white has more space. So it's already sort of a race. Which side can get a good plan in more quickly? Knight e2, a6, eyeing b5, knight g3, g6. So this is shutting down the squares for the white knight. And interestingly here, so we see a 2600 against a 2400. I kind of like this matchup in terms of a game to learn from, because we can see how a 2600, the black player here, outplays a 2400. White needs to look to play actively at some point, but so far, she has just moved this knight twice and hasn't done anything with the pawns yet. Bishop e2, and now we see h5. I'm giving this move an exclam. So instead of playing slowly on the queen side with b5, Elvis is going more quickly by playing h5, starting this kingside pawn storm. And it already highlights the sort of funny placed piece on g3, right? Pawn to h4 is a threat for black. Castle. And in this position, it's better to keep the king in the middle. Stockfish does not like castling here. That takes away all of the white advantage and puts it in equal territory. You may want to castle queenside, or you might want to just keep your king in the center, use the f1 square to reroute this knight that's going to be kicked, and then decide later, what do we do with the king? The castling right away, Stockfish does not love this move. 97, f3. So passive. Guys, this is one of the best things that you have to take away from today's class. Do not play this passively in a closed position. Or, I mean, in general, but in a closed position too. Don't play passively and let your opponent build up a big plan. Pawn to h4. Knight has to go back to h1. Knight to the corner. You can already tell that knight is sad. Eval's minus 0.3, so black is gaining the advantage. And now, not wasting any time. So this pawn moved up to h4, combination with the knight on h5. You can see the pieces are starting to work well together, and the goal is going to be tear open the white king position. Knight f2, bishop g5. This is the bad bishop for black, right? It's the same color as these pawns in the center. This is the bad bishop for white, trapped behind these pawns, meaning this is the good bishop on this diagonal. Black's trading bad bishop for good bishop. Nice, simple strategic concept. a3. So white's thinking maybe they will play on the queen side since black controls king side. Takes, takes. Knight f4. So the c1 bishop is gone. The knight immediately takes the chance to jump in here. And it's not easy to kick the knight because that would encourage a trade, opening the f-file, the h-file. Knight d3. Queen g5. Checkmate in one threat. Knight takes f4. Now, question for the chat. What is the best recapture here? E takes f4 or queen takes f4? What do you guys think? Yeah, Julio's saying that's one sad bishop on e2. Yes, he is. That's a really sad bishop here. I don't even know what color to make him. Light green. Wow, you guys are good. Okay, pawn. Everyone is saying pawn takes, pawn takes, pawn takes. Now, queen takes is not that bad of a move in terms of stockfish. So that's one thing. When we talk about chess strategy, that's an area that even though stockfish is strong, it understands the full board and with what's going to happen with best play. The thing that stockfish is missing is what gives you the best chance to win against other players that make mistakes, right? I make mistakes, you make mistakes, our opponents make mistakes. Stockfish doesn't. And it assumes that neither side does. So Stockfish says that queen takes is a minus 0.1 for black. E takes is a minus 0.3. But human against human, I think E takes is clearly the better move, and here's why. E takes F keeps the queens on the board when the white king is in some danger. It's much easier to play from the black side with queens on the board here in terms of creating winning chances than if you let the queens trade off. Whereas Stockfish says, this is a draw all day long, no matter what capture happens here. Human versus human, you want to keep the queens on. King safety is one of the biggest factors when it comes to queen trades. When your king is in more danger, look to trade queens. When your king is safer, which is surprisingly the king in the middle, keep the queens on the board. So now white plays b4, queen e5 played, rook to f2, and this is a blunder. The move that needs to be played is pawn to h3. The reason why is because black wants to play h3. If you let black play h3, this g pawn is getting traded no matter what, either for the h pawn or it's getting traded for the f pawn. And that's partially why black played queen e5 first. Sorry, I didn't mention that originally. If h3 is played here in g3, the f pawn is pinned to the queen. Right? See the queen's lined up on the diagonal. So queen e5 opens this threat of h3. And white sort of, I don't know if they missed it or if she just figured everything is safe here, but this is a really passive move and it doesn't block the threat. Okay, now h3 played. Here, white's going to try to get something going for counterplay. We're going to see that things go really well for black with this king safety issue. Bishop d1, h takes g, bishop a4, king f8. And now bishop takes d7 is the top move. So that would, I mean, that makes sense. We're trading off this bad bishop. It's been bad all game long for a potentially strong knight. I mean, that knight has a really good outpost if it gets to e5. But white doesn't go for it. Knight e2. And now black plays b5, shutting down this threat. The eval here might surprise you. It's minus 2.2 already. Black is up one pawn, which is the g pawn. Could be captured at any time. Right? So you could say equal material. Minus 2.2. White just doesn't have any counterplay for this pressure on the king side. CB, CB. And now black's actually going to use the queen side to help out soon. Okay, knight takes g2 played. Queen takes h2. The attack is breaking through. Queen goes back to e5. King e2. A takes b. And look at the white king. It had to run to f1, e2 just to get out of this attack. Now it's in the middle of the board. Huge king safety issue. And the eval is minus 5. We'll go through this kind of quickly. Black finally gets the rook in. So notice how black's using the queen side and the king side. Only up 1 point of material, but the position is completely winning. Rook h1. Nice tactic, trying to deflect the queen off the defense of the rook. g4. Final winning move. This is just opening up lines. The bishop is ready to come out. f4. And a queen takes b2. One move sacrifice followed by rook a2, winning the queen back, and white resigns. Okay, so here were the key lessons from the game. Number 1, speed is everything. Black's kingside attack was way faster than any sort of queenside counterplay from white. Also, use your pawns as a weapon. So we saw that h pawn march up the board for black really early on. It went h5, h4, eventually h3. That led to the win, right? That created chances. And something that neural network engines like AlphaZero and Leela Chess have figured out is pushing these rook pawns can be extremely strong in terms of long-term positional play. This game was played in 2007, before neural networks, but players already knew about the h5, h4 idea in these structures. But now it's even become more and more well-known, and players are realizing that they're even stronger than originally thought, pushing those rook pawns down the board. Okay, so question for you guys. What was your main takeaway from this game? What was the best thing you learned from this game? Don't castle if not needed, and use strong pawns. White's bishop was never in the game. Black's use of the kingside pawns was awesome. Don't castle to a side that's being attacked. Do not castle brainlessly. Yeah. So white should have kept the king in the center, stayed flexible. Quick pawn attack in the black blocked position. Importance of the initiative plus pawn structure and pawn advances. Good. Yeah, you guys are right on track. All right, so we're going to do one more game, but I want you guys to vote on the game. Do you want to see good versus bad bishop, or do you want to see a knight reroute game? Put your answers in the chat. Good versus bad bishop or knight reroute? Which game do we want to look at next? We're going a little bit long, so I'm going to chop out one of those two games, but it'll be in the eventual intermediate strategy class. Okay, let's see. Bishop, bishop, knight, knight, bishop, knight, knight. Oh, it's 4-3. Okay, knight's winning. 5-3. 5-5? Oh boy. It's 5-5, bishop versus knight game. Okay, the tiebreaker. Oh, two more knights just came in. Thomas and Asanga. Okay, so it's 7-5 for knight. I was going to be the tiebreaker, but looks like knight ended up winning. Let's go to the Nimzovich game. Okay, another knight. Karsten. This Spider goes boring, LOL. No, this is a good one, Spider. I mean, if you're here to learn strategic concepts, you'll like this game. And actually, let's do this so I don't forget. Let's do the ChessGoals course giveaway right now. Asanga's saying just do both briefly, Matt. Okay, Asanga, I'll do both briefly. Good versus bad bishop. Then we'll do the giveaway after this. But we're going through this one quickly, and then we'll go more slowly on the knight reroute. Okay. I'm convinced. Okay, so this game starts out with a bishop for knight trade. So this is going to set up the pawn structure. Okay, that gives black the double pawns here and the half open d file. And now white makes a mistake. Knight to d5. This is something that you see a lot in beginner games. In double king pawn games, usually this pawn would be on d6. But when this knight is pinned on f6, knight to d5 is a really good way to attack the pinned knight. But oftentimes the best way to defend it for black is to play h6 first, kick this guy back, so that when knight d5 is played, you have a strong response. So quick question for the chat. What is black's best move here? Why is knight d5 a mistake? g5. House is saying g5. That's exactly right. After knight takes f6, queen takes, this bishop goes to g3, and we get a really interesting position here. Let me go a couple moves ahead. Bishop g4, h3, takes. Okay, we get a really interesting position here. Bishop against bishop. Technically, the good bishop, in terms of the color of the pawns, is the bishop for white. He's on dark squares, and the pawns are all on light squares. This should be the bad bishop, right? Pawns are on dark, bishop's on dark. What we're going to learn in this game is that you want your bishop to be the active bishop, though. An active bishop can be more important than the color that it's on with the pawns. The bishop on g3, what we're going to see is this bishop gets stuck for the rest of the game. It never moves off of g3 because these black pawns are controlling any potential squares, and these double pawns are creating a problem because that bishop can never escape out backwards. It's always stuck back here. This bishop, even though it's on the color of the pawns, has flexibility. If this pawn moves, it could reroute, right? There's play for this bishop. It can move around at least. Okay, so black plays f6, cements this pawn. a5, pawn's on dark, but that's fine. There's a lot of flexibility. White's going for kingside play on the h-file. Black's going for this queenside flexibility. And what I love here is look at this position black set up, right? This bishop is still just stuck. Black set up this structure with the king on e6 and these pawns and the bishop that no matter what white does with the rooks, picture both of these rooks landing on the 7th rank somehow. Black's king is still safe and all the pawns are defended. So black made this game all about the queen side. It's a brilliant way to just highlight that essentially black is up a bishop here, right? Unless the queen side gets locked up. The bishop on g3 does nothing. All the play is queen side. b3, c6, rook a2, b5. So black's trying to make trades. Here again, we see a passive move. It's letting black dictate the action. The best move is a takes b first, and then rook a1. So at least white started choosing to fight back, not letting black control the position. But rook h1 played, just waiting passively. c4. We saw this in the other game too. So instead of locking up the position first with b4, that's a huge mistake. All the pawns are locked. You want to play c4. Create all this pawn tension on the flank of the board that favors you, right? So black is up a bishop on the queen side and creating this pawn tension to get the trades in. A takes, c takes, c takes, rook takes. It's going to sound like a broken record. All the black pieces are active, and this bishop is just a spectator. So black wins this b pawn. White's trying to play active, but black is really solid here still. Has the extra pawn, up the bishop on the queen side, and white resigns. Okay, so what's the key takeaway for you guys? Put your answers in the chat. I'll tell you what it is for me here. I like to look at the bishops in terms of, is the bishop on the same color of my pawns or opposite color of my pawns? And this game, to me, really reinforces the idea that the activity of the bishop can be just as important, if not more important, than if the bishop is on the color of your pawns or on the opposite color. But what do you guys think? What is your main takeaway? While you put your answer, we'll do the dog cam. He's snoozing in the sun. So Tim agrees with me. Scar says bishop got owned by the pawns. Thomas says, remember this motive with g5. Black's bishop was a strong anchor with options. Yep. Very good. Strategy to restrict the opponent's bishop. Yes. Okay. Here is the question for the chat for the giveaway. Yep, Scar, giveaway time. I need to do something with a number. Here's what it is. I have my chess notation sheet sitting in front of me. In the top game, in the game showing right now, how many moves long was the game? Put your answer in the chat. Whoever gets the closest gets a free ChessGoals course. And if there's a tie on what your guess is, you might have to change your answer. 25, 32, 36, 26, 33, 26, 28, 37, 40. 32. 65. Okay, soon you have to change your answer because someone did say 32 already. Ten moves, Mr. Bean Chess. 7 moves. Okay, soon saying 33. House says 29. Scar Dragon 24. Okay, we're only going with the first guess per person though, unless there was a tie. So House, your guess is locked in at 40. Scar Dragon, you already said 26. Okay, so the answer, this was why Soon had to change his answer. The answer was 31 moves, so Mr. Bean Chess wins the giveaway. Do you know which course you want, Mr. Bean Chess? Soon, you could have gone one lower. It's okay. Walda's really close too with, I think, 33. So Mr. Bean Chess, either send me an email, matt@chessgoals.com, or send me a message on Discord. Let me know your email and which course you want. And put your course in the chat so people can see which course do you want. All right, and we are going to the night reroute game since I got talked into doing both games. All right, let's see. Here we go. So this game won a best game prize. We have Nimzovich with the white pieces, Rubenstein with the black pieces, played in 1926. And we're going to see an awesome night reroute in this game. So I'm going to fast forward for the first 17 moves. Don't worry about these moves. Okay, we reach this position. The opening's over. The position's about equal. It's a 0.1, maybe 0.0, depending on which stockfish you're looking at and how long it runs. It's about equal. We have a really solid pawn structure here, right? All the pawns are locked up. There's not a lot of activity for the pawns in this position. But now it's time to make a plan. So question for you guys in the chat. What is White's plan here? What does Nimzovich want to do from the white side? Okay, Mr. Bean's going to check out the courses. We'll report back. What do you guys think? What's White's plan here? Attack kingside, attack kingside. Plant the knight on e5. Control the e-file. I mean, it is interesting to me that this position is equal. I sort of like it for white, but maybe the computer just says, you know, there's no breakthrough that can work for either side by force, right? Both sides can defend what the other side's doing. Go after f5, double the rooks, knight g6, check and mate with the queen. Okay, so who can tell me the top move? Well, actually, okay, so there's multiple moves for white because the computer says equal. Who can tell me what move Nimzovich played in the game? Put that answer in the chat. Maybe you know this game. This is a really cool move, and it looks crazy. Thomas, that's correct. Thomas got it right away. Knight to h1. Knight h1. So once you see the move, you can start to think through why that move was played. The knight goes to the corner, right? Knight in the corner only looks at 2 different squares. It's like the most passive position possible for the knight. But look at this plan. It goes to h1. It goes to f2. It goes to h3. It goes to g5. Knight h1 is played to get the knight to g5. When the knight's on g5, then it's attacking f7, h7. Hopefully that bishop's still on the diagonal. The queen comes out. Still got the rook on the e-file. White's got a plan at least, right? The position is equal. Stockfish says I can draw this from either side, but White has a plan now. And this is the key, right? White wants to improve this knight, and that's going to lead to an attack, hopefully. Bishop d7 played, knight f2, rook e8, White doubles on the file like you guys talked about. Takes, takes. Knight to d8 for black, so black's trying to reroute. Maybe put this bishop on the long diagonal. Knight h3. And look what Nimzovich is doing, just patiently following the plan, right? That knight started on g3. It's already on h3. It's only one square away from its goal square. One move away. Bishop c6 played, and this is a mistake. So bishop c6 is a one-move threat, but it's really not slowing down what White wants to do. That encourages the queen to come out to h5. That's where she wants to go anyways. Yes, perfect. So Waldez is saying, why not h6? h6 here is the best move. Knight g5 can still be played. Another strong move for black is bishop to b5. So one of these two moves or both of them. Right? If you play h6, you probably still want bishop b5. You go bishop b5, you probably still want h6. But the idea is black needs to trade off this guy in c4. It doesn't look super strong yet, but the combo of that bishop hitting g8 and then the queen knight coming in can be lethal. So black should try to trade off that passive bishop, right? It's just sitting here defending for this bishop that's about to create some problems. So bishop c6 played. Too slow of a move, encourages White to do what they want to play anyways. And now there's a crazy threat. Let's just give black a random move to see the threat. a5. White can play bishop takes a5. So if black didn't push the pawn, then the threat is just bishop to a5 with the pawn sitting here. After queen takes a5, knight g5, h6, there's queen to g6, threatening mate in 1. And after taking, the queen goes back to h5, checkmate. So there's this super strong threat of checkmate. And you might be wondering, why did we need bishop to a5 in this position? If knight to g5 was played, black can slow down the attack a little bit with pawn to g6. And the queen helps defend along the 7th. But look at this line. If bishop takes a5, queen d7, right? So the queen trying to help out. Knight g5, g6, queen h6, queen g7. After takes, takes, the bishop shows why it's there on a5, leading to a fork. So bishop a5 is this tempo move that not only attacks the queen to try to deflect her off the 7th, but creates this threat that comes into play like 4 moves later with bishop takes d8 and then the fork on f7. So kind of a cool idea. Or sorry, the fork on e6. So bishop a5 is a threat. g6 was played in the game. Queen h4, queen g7, queen f2. Now this is another brilliant idea by Nimzovich. The queen comes back to f2 to hit this pawn. Why is that important? Black needs to defend the pawn. The strongest move here, which is played in the game, is bishop to c5. But now watch what White does. Pawn to b4. Black blunders here. This is insane, guys. The eval here is plus 0.7. And b4 is not even the strongest move. The strongest move is knight g5, and it says 1.5. This is a 0.7. But the reason this move is so good is because the strongest move for black is, in my opinion, almost impossible to see. Black needs to play bishop back to e7, guarding this knight g5 idea, and just allowing queen takes d4 with check. Who's ever going to do that? Who's just going to give up a pawn in an equal position with check? That's the strongest move, though. Bishop to b6 was played in the game. The natural move. The eval here is 4.5. The game is over. That move loses the game, which just seems insane. So what Nimzovich did is he took that bishop on d6, encouraged us to play to c5 with queen f2 hitting the pawn, and then played b4, encouraging it to go back. Nimzovich may or may not have known that bishop e7 was the strongest. He might have known b4 wasn't the best move even, but it's still a good move and it's close to the best move. And there's a high probability that that bishop's going back to b6, where it's now just shut out of the game completely. That bishop cannot help on the king side anymore. Just a really strong sequence by white. Queen goes back to h4 now. So now there's no bishop on d6 helping out over here. Queen goes right back out to h4 and it's stronger now. Rook e8. Rook e5. I like this move a lot too. This rook is just cementing itself in terms of controlling the e-file. Black cannot take because the pawn takes back. Queen's eyeing the dark squares. Actually, let's just look at that. Takes, takes. If you go for this, queen h6 is going to be a mate. Thanks to the help of this guy. And if you don't take this pawn, then it's going to be trouble. So rook takes e5, not a good move. Black is still in the game here, still holding, but it's a +1. Knight f7. And this is a blunder. Queen d7 is the best move, which is hard to play, sitting back and waiting. Knight f7 played, and now after bishop takes, queen takes, knight g5, we're going to see how things go downhill quick. Queen g8 to guard h7. Takes, takes. And now, question for the chat. You guys have been silent for a while. What's the best move for white? So Nimzovich saw this whole sequence. There is one winning move for white. Everything else is a draw with best play. Only one winning move. Can you find it? Yeah, Julio, good point. It's a knight reroute game, but the bishop activity is important in this game too. Tyler comes in the chat saying, resign. Just kidding. White should not resign. Okay, Julio's guessing knight takes h7. Any other guesses? One winning move for white. What do we think? House is saying queen to e1. Ronald is saying queen e1. Scar says knight e6. Awesome. Okay, Mr. Bean wants one of the move-by-move courses. I think the beginner one would be a good one for you to start with for your students. So just make sure to send me your email, Mr. Bean. And if you don't have a login on courses.chessgoals.com, make a login. That'll help, because then I can just add the course to your account. Queen e1, queen e7. Yes, queen e1 is the move. Queen e1 is the only winning move here. So look at how white just changes the front constantly, right? Queen's out here, queen's back here, queen's back on h4, queen's back on e1. Just dancing around. There's too many threats for black to figure out what to do with. So white was flexible. Bishop c6. Queen sneaks in. King h8. And now for good measure, white sacks the b pawn, because that can help bring this last piece into the game. The problem is knight e6 is coming anyways, followed by queen f6. This is just a nice insertion move. Queen g7. Queen takes, king takes, wins the bishop. Knight f3, c5, knight e5, bishop c7. We'll go through this kind of quick just to see the win. But essentially here, white is up a knight for a pawn. And it's just about technique. Here, black resigns. All right. So, key lessons from the game. A piece's path isn't always forward. So this was a backward move that started the reroute, knight h1. But sometimes that can be the best way to get a piece onto its optimal attacking square, which was g5 in this game. And also a good plan has many parts to it, right? So Nimzovich attacked the king, but also poked at that pawn on d5, which really I think was the key to the game. Like the knight h1 idea was useful, but getting that dark bishop for black to reroute from d6 over to b6 was really just this beautiful idea that put black in a situation where he couldn't defend the king side anymore. Also, you want to be flexible with your plans. So we saw here white was really flexible and patient, moving the queen back and forth, creating different threats. And eventually bringing the queen back to the E file was kind of the final nail in the coffin that got white the win. So last question for you guys. What was your key takeaway from this game? And also, if you want to just say, what were your key takeaways from the class in general today? Overall, what are your takeaways? Walda says, great game. Improve your bad pieces. Yeah, Vince is saying knight g5, then decoy black's queen. Knight was the hero of the game along with the e-file control. Rook's in the open files. Yep. Tim says be flexible with the plans. And just a note for you guys, we are going to take a weekend off next week from a live class. And we will plan to have one in 2 weeks on the 23rd. And then we probably won't have a class on the 30th. So no class on the 16th or 30th. Class on the 23rd, and then again back in December we'll have classes. Queen reroute. Yes, queen reroute. Check for imbalances, act accordingly. Yes, Julio. Walda is saying easy strategic rules, but hard to get into your own games. That's true. And that's why you just keep practicing and review all your games. Vince says, awesome lesson. Thanks again. Thank you, Vince. Yeah, thank you everyone for watching today. 24 viewers still, 24 likes. We had a $2 super chat, first super chat ever. Thank you, Muhammad, if you're still here. Tim says, mind-blowing class. Thank you again. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Guard Dragon. Great lesson. Big kudos. Thomas says, thanks. Do we want to continue? So in 2 weeks, do we want to continue with a similar theme? Like, do we want to keep going down this kind of strategic planning type class, or do we want to do something different and maybe do like big picture, like chess improvement, your guys' study plans? What do you guys feel like? You're a great teacher, Matt. Thank you. Thank you. Current rating is 2200 USCF. Walda says, let's keep strategic. Julio says, strategy, pawn structure. Okay, I think we will probably plan to keep a strategy type class then. Then says strategy. Awesome, awesome. Strategy. Okay, good. All right, we are going to wrap up there. About 90 minutes in. Thank you everyone again for watching. So remember, class again in 2 weeks, none next weekend. And just stay tuned to your emails and social media. I'll post to confirm the time and date. All right, thanks everyone. Have a good rest of your day.